My name is Annie Reiser, Certified Zentangle Teacher and Certified Botanical Illustrator. And today we're going to work on a really fun tangle on our Lunchtime Tangle series called Cirque. Cirque is by Geistner, and I just love this little floral pattern. It's pretty new to me, very simple to learn. I learned this actually in a little class that I took online with Mary Rose Feldman, a fabulous Certified Zentangle teacher. And we made these cute little nested pouches. This is the biggest one. And I used Cirque on the front. And I also have this sample here. This is more attuned to what we're going to be learning today. This gives you an example also of what you can do. Here I've done a cluster of them around to make kind of a little posy. So today we're going to start with a 3.5 by 3.5 inch piece of paper. I'm using 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. You can use a Zentangle tile, whatever you have, a mixed media. Do use your journal. I've got my graphite pencil. This is a Zentangle one. And I've got my 001 Micron Sakura, as well as a kneaded eraser for possibly lifting some of my shading. We're going to start by making just a circle about in the middle, 3/4 of the way up on this little square. The circle should be about this size, maybe a little bit smaller than a dime. We want to save space because we're going to go up here with our petals. And we're going to start with what is just basically a flux petal. It's going to sort of take on that curve and bow around this little circle. So we're going to start in between this point here and do the same thing. Turn my tile and do the same thing. This one ends up having 5. Usually about 6 is a perfect amount. I could have gone a little flatter with that flux shape, but no fear, because we are going to actually embellish that by adding some more similar little fluxes within that space there. And this is where you can make a bit of a variation. You can just do 1. You can do 2, and always keep in mind that you want to wrap your flux closely to that petal that's existing. Here's one that's got a bit of a bigger shape, so I'm going to go ahead, make 2. And this one as well. And it's fun to vary the size of those little petals that go in between. And then what Chris does is she makes this kind of midrib that swirls around, trying to kind of mimic that same swirling pattern. And then she puts a dot at the end, like we do with our flux, or you can put 3 dots, whatever, or you can leave that out. And then I'm going to do the same on these little inside petals. There we go, so simple. And then the next step is to do something here with the center. And what Chris originally planned is to do some hatching, like a grid pattern in here, which I've got on my tangle tag here, which you can see is very flat. But I want to show you something that will enhance this little center so that it kind of pops out 3-dimensionally. We'll start by dividing this center in half, and then we're going to make our grid lines, rather than just straight, we're going to bow them out from that center line, and then do the same thing in this direction, creating a grid that's a little bit more globus shaped, kind of 3-dimensional. And then, of course, we can add our stem. 2 little parallel lines. And go for our next flower. and yet a different center. So I'm going to just play around kind of like I did here. I'm going to make my next flower just to the right. And you can vary the size of your circle that you start with. This one's a little larger. Here we go. We're going to start our flux shape. And I have to say, so the way that Chris devised the step out is to do the flux always at the top. But I kind of like going from the bottom. You have to just move a little bit further away. And for whatever reason, I do not know, I like doing it this way. So you have to decide what feels most comfortable for you. And I do actually like how it's a little bit irregular. That's how a real flower would be. Nothing would be completely symmetrical, right? You can go back in also in these areas and add a little bit of lively line. Weight those corners, even here. We can do that also on the underside of the petal to really make it lift from the other petal. And then we're going to go ahead and add our little midrib. Remember to curve that. On this one, I think I'm going to do a center that is actually a tangle called Trent width, and that is spelled Trent width. And I can't remember whose tangle it is. I'll put it in the video when I edit it up. So it starts like this, like a little crescent moon, and then going to about midsection to that crescent moon. I'm going to do another one starting there. Here we go, midsection from that one. And what it does is makes this almost like an aperture of your photo lens, or the swirling petals of a rose as they, are still tightly closed. It's a beautiful pattern just as a rose in itself. But I love it here in this little cirque. It makes for such a nice, interesting center. And again, I'm just going to make a little stem and go for my next cirque. Guess I'm going to have to turn it back around. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. And on this one, I think I'm just going to do a print tomb. And then again, we want to add those little midribs. You can add more dots, just like we do with Rick's Flux, right? There we have would be a really pretty little greeting card actually. And now comes the fun part, which is the shading. That's going to make everything three-dimensional. And so where would we shade? First of all, I would go ahead and start shading our sphere very much like we do our pearls, kind of like a crescent on one side and drawing out that graphite towards the center, making it lighter in the middle, and then leaving a highlight on the upper left corner. And I need to lift that back up. Really getting dark here. Same thing, let's just do all of them. Kind of do a crescent here. Leaving that left side in highlight. On this one, you can be a little bit more fancy with your shading and go where the petals basically are forming the center core. And you almost need a finer blending tool for this. If you took my shading tutorial last time, you'll understand that we want to lift those petals from each other by putting shading underneath. And then of course you can also add some around. Okay, so the next thing that you can do is put some shading on the midrib and blend it out. And what I like to do is kind of shade mostly one side and leave this other side in light. And what it does, it makes it look like this is sort of bending into the light, and this going down into the corner. So I'm going to do that on all of mine. So basically the inside corner is where you want it to be darkest, and then you draw that graphite out. And there's all different ways. You don't have to shade like this in particular. I just think it makes for a nice three-dimensional look. It really makes it look like the petal is twisting and turning itself inward toward the globe or its center and up the light. And then on these, I would just really get really dark down here. And you can, you know, if you've got a small enough tortillon, you can try to shade it similarly. So let's do that again on this one. Going from down here in the corner along the midrib, and then blending that up, staying dark down here. And then let me show you one other way you could shade this, and that is you would lift this top leaf from this bottom leaf by really going in here. So it's basically the opposite of what we just did. And top leaf, bottom leaf. That's probably the more botanically correct way to do it. But I would say that no matter what you do, if you just stay consistent, you will get the look you're going for. And then I would put a little bit of drop shadow here, or cast shadow, meaning that petal is probably casting a bit of a shadow on the top of the stem. And if you have room, you could pull a little graphite down on one side and leaving the other side in light. That's getting pretty technical and not really necessary, but isn't that pretty? So if you'd like, you can also embellish these with fescue kind of like leaves. Who doesn't love fescue, right? Overlap is always great. You can beef up your little fescue by adding a bit of a dimension there. You could also add a little bit of hatching here instead of graphite. You could also actually hatch shade all of it if you'd like to get a fun look. But there is Cirque. How fun is that? So here I have the little pouch that I showed you in the beginning that was the impetus for this tutorial. It's a nested pouch, and this is the largest one of the three. And I wanted to show you how we can make this illusion of this threaded or beaded Cirque flowers. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to just take my pencil and make a bit of a string to follow. So I'm going to say I want my little daisy chain to go like that. And that just helps me not to have to think while I'm drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and start by making the base tangle of poke root. You all know poke root, I hope. If not, go look that up. It's a Zentangle tangle that we learn in our very first introduction class usually. So I'm just going to make my circle like this. So I'm building the circles from the top now, connecting them like we do poke root, making that little frown and my center for my cirque. Notice this is even actually a bit close. Let's leave a little bit more space next time because otherwise you're going to get a big cluster, and I'm going to make this one a little smaller. So it's really fun to play with the different sizes and spacing on your little daisy chain. So let's go ahead and build this out as the cirque. So the one thing you have to remember is when you come up against a line like that, you're going to always want to draw behind. Start a little further up so you can see what I mean. Draw behind. Behind. You can get a really nice Zen flow going once you get that flux curve down. It's really fun to do. It's a lot easier to do when you're not talking like me. But yeah, I had actually enough room in between there. Let's do another one, this time smaller. Always keeping that circular motion going. Of course, you can go back and embellish. Let's do one more just to give you that idea. Again, so my thread would be on top, underneath here, because it's threading through the bead, correct? Going behind. And then you can always do things like put another one right next to it that's not really beaded, that might be close by, and always, again, draw behind. Layering these is always a fun look. So there you have that possibility as well. And of course, then you'd go back and fill in your center, just like we learned before. Drawing behind. Anyway, I think you get the the idea. I really can't stop making these flux shapes. They're so much fun. There you have it, Cirque. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time. That's it for today's Tangle. Thanks for joining me. If you like these lunchtime tutorials, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also invite you to check out my website for classes that I have scheduled or to purchase my Tangle tags for your favorite step outs. That's bowtangle.net. I'm leaving you with some other links too. Zentangle.com, where you can learn more about the Zentangle method from its founders, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas. You can also visit their store there for a multitude of Zentangle paper tiles, tools, books, and kits. Tanglepatterns.com is that site I talk about where you can explore hundreds of tangle patterns, read about them, and get the step out, which is basically the deconstruction of the pattern. And finally, if you'd like to share your beautiful results with me and my student community, please join Annie's Bowtangle Alumni Facebook page. We're a private group where we inspire each other with our work and offer tips and useful information about art and Zentangle.